나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교. Hi, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I hope you're in good health and safe, secure. I'm going to continue reading translations of Nichiren's Gosho. This one, again, from the material in Jacqueline Stone's dissertation. And this one, we'll see where the, so far, I don't know if you've noticed, but the translations that I've read of Gosho from this academic scholarship doesn't seem to have the translation disease of trying to apply Western religious terms to Buddhism. And I think it's quite refreshing and validating, because this has been my greatest, not my greatest, but one of my greatest foundational reasons for starting this channel, let alone my website and so forth, is to try to remove this inappropriate translation bias, inculcating what Japanese and the translators of Japanese, Chinese texts feel it's their responsibility, or I can't believe they're ignorant of what they're doing, but they're intentionally using old Western religious terminologies to somehow make it easier for Westerners to grasp Buddhism. But in the process, they're muddying the waters and in many cases just outright obliterating Buddhist thought. Certainly Shakyamuni's intent is being massacred by terms which I talked about in the last video, and you know I rail on this all the time. So it's really refreshing to read an academic translation that doesn't have words like, faith. Instead, you have resolve, which is much more accurate. There's no mysticism in Buddhism, please. All right. So this Gosho is the transmission of the soul great matter of birth and death. This book isn't getting any lighter. I don't know if you can tell. Okay, so the note there first. All right, so let's just get into it. And after that big old disclaimer, we'll see if I run into problems with this translation. But here we go. This is no small subject in all of Buddhist scholarship, right? Especially since a lot of the expedient means in earlier teachings, Shakyamuni was dealing with a lot of hardwired religious ideas in the people of India. And they have deities for deities. They just go on and on with their mystical, reincarnation and all these different gods and representations, and they're steeped in mysticism. It wasn't always that way, and that's one of the reasons why Siddhartha Gautama decided this is some mucky stuff. It's no wonder everyone is suffering and anxious and has this sense like they can't do anything about their lot in life. Add to that the political systems of the caste system, where you couldn't do anything about your goals, your what's the word we use all the time in the West? Our ambition. If you were born to a certain bloodline, a certain caste, a certain socioeconomic reality, that was it, my friend. You were never getting out of that. You could only do as best you could within it. How defeating to the human spirit is that, right? So in teaching those people, you had to reach them with what they knew. So a lot of folks new to Buddhism or new to Asian thought or even just cultural dissimilarities would read these early teachings and perceive them as teaching those very iniquities and those very problematics of socioeconomic reality as though they were Buddhist teachings, and they are not. This is why you can't just read the words. You have to look for the meaning beneath them. It's just like when you learn math in school. A lot of the early tricks that you learn in mathematics, with fractions and things of that nature, as you learn more complex mathematics, you'll get into geometry and then into algebra and those kinds of things. Suddenly, the language is reinterpreted, and what used to be, cancellation, remember cancellation? You finally find out don't do that anymore. That's a shortcut, but you need to know what's actually going on here, and you're multiplying by a factor or a fraction of 1 over 1 or 1 over 2 or 2 over 1 or these kind of things. And when both sides of the equal signs have the same operators, they don't cancel out. They equal 1. So it's a redundancy. And you can remove that redundancy knowing what you're removing in order to solve for the problem, the equation. And then, so cancel is like pushed out of your vocabulary because you're learning more correctly, more profoundly, what's actually going on in the equation. Now, you don't have to be a fan of mathematics to understand this is the nature of teaching. That as complexity is introduced, deeper understanding is the goal, not adding more complexity. Right? What would education be like if all we did was make things more complex? It may seem that way on the surface, but the same is true of teaching anything, and in this case, Buddhism, right? So don't get too bogged down in each and every word. Try to understand overall what the lesson is, what the insight is. That will make your study far easier, number one, and secondly, far more valuable. Because ultimately, the only reason we study is to stretch our mind out of its confines. The confines being what we accept as unchanging truth in our samsaric mind, and opening it up to see well beyond that. And isn't that what we do when we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo? We blow those other consciousnesses out of the way with their bags of truth, and we break right through those bags and see a much larger picture. And the moment we do that, there's a certain relief, release. Sometimes you get giddy at understanding, oh, gosh, what have I been doing all this time, right? So let's see how this Gosho reads. I have read your letter carefully. Now, as for the transmission of the soul great matter of birth and death, this indicates Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, but what do you mean by that, right? So this is typical Nichiren writing a response with guidance toward understanding the Buddhist method. And he's going to have to do what I just did. He's going to have to take you through several examples of what are in the teachings and help bring out the meaning in those things. Right off the bat, the transmission of the soul great matter of birth and death indicates Myoho Renge Kyo. So there's the solution. Let's see how we got there. There's the method for dealing with this great, because this is all we talk about, is moment to moment, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. How do we solve that equation for getting rid of, for resolving out the suffering, the stress, the anxiety, the pain, and have just life at its maximal expression? Why do I say that? Because the maximal expression of life is a life well lived, free of obstacles. Yeah? These 5 characters, Myoho Renge Kyo, represent the transmission that has flowed without a moment's interruption since many long kalpas ago, which the 2 Buddhas Shakyamuni and many jewels, together in the jeweled stupa, transferred to Bodhisattva superior conduct. Right, the Bodhisattvas of the earth, the future generations. That's what that means. Bodhisattvas of the earth is you and I. We are the future generations, led as we are by Nichiren, who identifies with the personage, the identifying goal and teacher and life of Bodhisattva superior practice or conduct. I've heard it said many different ways. In this case, superior conduct. Conduct being the practice, right? And the reference to Buddha Shakyamuni and many jewels together in a jeweled stupa refers to the treasure tower, which is our Buddhahood, all of our Buddhahood. So right away in this sentence, which seems simple enough, are inculcated, are pulled in all these various concepts of the teacher and the transfer over time of this truth, this method for instantiating what is our greatest, most fully manifested life. The jeweled stupa, the treasure tower, the Myoho Renge Kyo. Myo represents death and Ho birth. Now, you notice how he uses these 5 characters differently depending on whatever he's talking about. Myo, you could read this and say, Myo represents death and Ho represents birth, but you'd be making a serious error. You're reading the words literally. And if you study enough, you'll see, well, last time I read, Myo meant something else. What he's doing is he's creating equations. He's putting up an equal sign here, and he's saying, as far as this discussion on birth and death, you could view Myo as equating to death and Ho as equating to birth. So he's applying the same 5 characters to all of these fundamental matters that Shakyamuni dealt with in his teachings of the Buddhist method, how we instantiate our Buddhahood. So Myo and Ho and Ren and Ge and Kyo, they have the typical flowery meanings, but in actual practice, they always represent or deal with the realities of our questions, the things that cause us stress and anxiety and so on and so forth. So in this equation of you're asking about the fundamental matter of birth and death, you could see an aspect of myo being the death and ho being the birth. And that's interesting because I will add to that in our discussion, in my discussions on these various subjects, and I've talked on birth and death a lot. What he's saying is myo, that character that embodies the unfathomable nature of the cosmos, of the ultimate reality. Yeah, I'll say it again, the energy, the formations that we all, planets, stars, you and me, grass, trees, are all instantiated from the big picture, is represented as death, not because death, you have to understand, death isn't an end. Death is part of the process. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. Everything in the universe, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. So death is no ending. It's a transitory point in the big picture. And why is that important? Because if you're still afraid of dying, then you've accepted and swallowed whole all the mysticism that wants to tell you, oh, your life is just something. Maybe your life is, like so many religions, your life is for you to have pain, to atone for sins and so forth. What a disgusting way to think about your life, as some kind of jail sentence. It's incredible to me that those kinds of thoughts and religions continue to this day. It's self-assassination. And I don't mean self as in ego. I mean self as in this precious opportunity. Right? What a horrible way to live. Buddhism, starkly opposite to that, says, no. This is a privilege to be here, to be conscious with all our consciousnesses, to experience this great drama of the entire universe. Nowhere else, no how else can we experience this amazing process of life, which consists of moment to moment, birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. Everything is in that soup, and nothing else other than a mind can see it, perceive it, and experience it. Buddha-ness, right? And Ho regards birth. And you might think, well, isn't that backwards? Isn't our birth our opportunity for myo and perception, and Ho the end of that? But no, you have to understand, myo and Ho represents aspects of all life, not just yours and mine. So birth puts us in this apparatus, this body, brain, where the mind can emerge as a property, yeah? But it's a very temporary thing, that merging. Even if you live 100 years in the scope of the universe, that's less than a blip, right? So you have this precious moment, opportunity, this manifestation. That speaks to Ho. And Myo is the much greater process of life that is the entire universe, the body writ large. Myo is infinitely larger than Ho. And so death isn't an end. Death is incalculable moments of rebirth. Birth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death. You think of it that way, not just you, but the planet, the solar system, the galaxy. These all are in process, just like you and I are. And they arise, and they endure as they decay, and then they dissolve. So will this universe on, yes, a much larger time scale. Myo. And of all that potential, as unfathomable as it is, you, Ho, get to experience it. Ho, you manifest. Myo, the grandeur of the huge, and Ho, the instantiation of the small, yet with this experience ability to experience the whole. It's amazing. Not mystical, but it's amazing, isn't it? So, these two dharmas, birth and death, are the substance of the 10 realms. Of course, the 10 realms, the 10 worlds. Hell, hunger, animality, right? All of it. Rapture, bodhisattva, learning, realization, Buddha. And they interpenetrate. There's never just one moment where you are in the world of animality. You may be circling around it a lot, but that animality is joined by countless other worlds agglomerating around it. It's like a big dust cloud. I remember a long time ago, I said it's kind of like Pigpen. In the Peanuts character, he's always got this dust cloud follows him around. Even when he's standing still, it's kind of vibrating around him, right? This is the 10 realms and the 10 realms and the 1,000 factors, the 3,000 realms, right? See how all this ties together? They are also called the Lotus, that is the Dharma entity. And this is a reference to the teaching of the Lotus Sutra being the one teaching that Shakyamuni gave that wasn't directed to other people's capacity, but directed to his own. And so this is what he was teaching to those future bodhisattvas of the earth, you and I, and bodhisattva superior conduct. This is how you do it. This is how I did it. This is how you do it. It's very simple. You just invoke your Buddha-ness. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Tendai, Chi, states, quote, "Truly you should know that the causes and effects of dependent and primary recompense or reward are all the lotus of the Dharma entity." The effects and the causes of dependent and primary reward or recompense are all the lotus of the Dharma entity. It's just another way of saying what I talk about all the time: energy, maximal potential, anything, information. Is this cauldron of Pigpen's dust field coalescing into manifestations of possible potential instantiation, manifestation, which leads to a universe that goes through all of its changes and cooling plasma and all the science you can dig up that eventually produces you and I with mind. All those cause and effects. You can't count them. You can't write them down. You can only abstract them in your mind. And yet here you are as actual proof of the process. And our reading of the Lotus Sutra says, yeah, this very idea of the lotus is like the greater, transpose that idea to the reality of the entire universe. There's no difference between the reality of the entire universe and all of the energies and formations and forms and decay and process. Then you're exactly the same. You and I are exactly that same process. That's one of the sit your butt down moments, isn't it? Whoa. Yeah. You ever seen those science shows where they show you these magnificent pictures from the Hubble telescope and now the James Webb telescope of these formations, these galaxies, these nebulae, these stars? And if I can find the video, I'll put the link in here somewhere. Maybe some of you can put it in the comments, where they take those huge pictures of the universe, areas of the universe, and then they go into the human body and look at cells and the manufacturing of the cells. And the closer and closer they get to the tiniest components of our human body, an electron telescope, really getting down to the nitty gritty that we can't see with the naked eye, obviously, starts eerily resembling nebulae and features of the universe. It's no accident, my friends. We're the same exact process. Yeah, be awestruck. Truly, you should know that the causes and effects of dependent and primary recompense, dependent, in other words, the result of formations versus that which got the ball rolling in the first place, the formation energies, and form. So you have primary and what the word they use? Dependent. Dependent because it can't exist on its own. It's part of the process, just as we are. In this interpretation, quote, dependent and primary recompense, end quote, indicates birth and death. Birth of the universe, birth of the human, birth of a tree, birth of a rhino. The manifestation from formation, birth. Death, the ongoing process of change, constantly. See, death isn't an end. It's part of the process. And I don't mean that it's not an end in the sense of, oh, we have a soul, we'll go on. Stop it. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that all of these cults and religions and are all based on fear. Fear of what? Death. So we have to make up great fables and stories about, well, it'll be better after you're dead. No, it won't. You won't be here. I'm talking about the process of formations and that we live, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. That death doesn't end you. But your physical extinction does. Why? Because where do you actually exist? In this? In this? You exist in your mind. Where there is mind, there is perception. Where there is no body, no apparatus to support mind. If there's no mind, there's no consciousness, there's no you and me. That's a mental cognition, a perception. And it only exists while we're here living as humans. But when we are extinct, we're extinct. But we really, especially in the West, and I think everywhere, we think of extinction, that last moment of being a human alive. We think of it as the end. How egotistical is that? Because if it were really the end, then the whole universe would shrivel up and go in the trash, and everything would end. But it only ends for your mind of perceiving the process. You need to start ungluing yourself from the fear and this limited concept of death and realize that that isn't the end of all things. That isn't the end of the process. The process is huge, and you and I, as incredible as this life is a temporary little bubble of manifestation within the whole. And so we best make the maximum use of this moment that we have, because it's the only opportunity to do anything with it, and might as well enjoy it while we're at it, right? It's that simple. That's what Buddhism is about. It clarifies that where there are birth and death, there are the workings of causes and effects, and are also the Dharma of the Lotus. The larger picture. The great teacher Dengyo, Saicho, states, quote, "The two dharmas of birth and death are the subtle workings of the one mind. The two ways of existence and non-existence are the true virtue of original enlightenment," end quote. Which is another way of saying what I was just telling you about energy, potential energy, formation energy, birth, death of the entirety of the universe are the exact same process that you and I go through, and everything with it, in it. Heaven and earth, yin and yang, the sun and moon, the 5 stars, and the 10 Dharma realms, from hell to the fruits of Buddhahood, there is none that is not subject to birth and death. It's the process. Such birth and death are the birth and death of Myoho Renge Kyo. So he's now saying that Myoho Renge Kyo, another way to understand the amazing inculcated invocation of Buddhahood that is Myoho Renge Kyo, contains the whole thing from beginning to end. Remember the 10 factors? Nyoze en, nyoze ko, nyoze honma kukyoto. Right? From beginning to end. The suchness is the same. Tendai's Chiquan states, arising, quote unquote, means the arising of the Dharma nature, and perishing, the quiescence of the Dharma nature. I love that. The two Buddhas, Shakyamuni and many jewels, also represent birth and death. In the same way, Shakyamuni, like Myo, represents the true nature of all phenomena. And many treasures, well, where do you experience treasures? Ownership, happiness, wonderfulness, jewels. Where does that mean anything? Only in the samsaric mind, right? Whole. The amazing function of everything, Myo, the manifestations from it, whole. Myo whole. How closely related are those two aspects? Renge. Like the lotus flower, that the moment it blossoms is also seeding its future. It's a transfer of energy, right? The teaching to understand that and how to instantiate that, kyo. Myoho Renge Kyo. This is why they're not magic words. This is why we understand the more we study that these characters encapsulate much broader concepts, teachings, understandings. Such birth and death are the birth and death of Myoho Renge Kyo. Tendai's Cheikwan states arising means the arising of the Dharma nature and perishing the quiescence of the Dharma nature, the two aspects of formation and dissolution. The two Buddhas, Shakyamuni and many jewels, also represent birth and death. Let's go on. This being the case, when one chants Myoho Renge Kyo, understanding that these three, the Lord Shakyamuni who attained Buddhahood in the remotest past, right? We know about that, what that means. The Lotus Sutra that enables all to attain that Buddha way, and ourselves living beings are utterly without distinction. One receives the transmission of the sole great matter of birth and death by the process itself. We are part and parcel of it. There is no separation. This matter is the important essential for Nichiren's disciples and lay followers, and is also what it means to hold the Lotus Sutra. Do you see how this is regurgitating the same teaching? This Gosho is very profound. In essence, for one who arouses, there's that word again, resolve, and chants Namo Myoho Renge Kyo with the awakening that now is the final moment. Now is the final moment. Now again, now again, now again. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. It is expounded, quote, 1,000 Buddhas shall extend their hands, causing him not to fear and not to fall into the evil paths. There's that fear again. To chant is to eliminate fear. You ever feel that while you're chanting to your mandala? That by the time you're done chanting, it feels like you could do anything. And yes, you can. The only thing keeping you from doing anything is fear. Fear inculcated by attachment. Everything is a limitation. When you hang on to stuff like it's unchanging, you create the formula for fear. Loss, one of the greatest sensations of fear. But you don't lose anything. You're constantly moving with the entirety of the universe. How joyful, Nichiren says, that not one Buddha or two, nor 100 or 200, but 1,000 Buddhas shall come to greet us, to take us along the flow of life, taking us by the hand. It is impossible to restrain one's tears of rejoicing. But for one who does not believe in the lotus, it is expounded, quote, that person at life's end shall enter the Avicii hell. That's talking about the death process. And if you don't get rid of that fear, your death process is ugly. It's horrible. All you think about is when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Your entire life is lived in profound fear. For what? That's the Avicii hell. The Avicii hell is this life without knowing, rejoicing, accepting, and swimming in the maximal potential of your life. If you're not doing that, if you're not chanting, if you're not understanding how life works at this profound level, you're suffering. And that suffering is hell. It's nowhere else. It's not under the ground. It's not some other planet. It's in your mind, how you condition and experience your life is in your mind. If you don't like where you are in your life, then you need to change your mind. Not the outside stuff. None of that changing will matter. Only your mind makes the difference. So surely the guardians of hell will come and seize him by the hand. You get completely consumed by your fears. How pitiful! No doubt the 10 kings will pass judgment on him, and the deities who have accompanied him from birth will rebuke him. All your attachments, all your fears, they will completely consume you. Now those of Nichiren's disciples and lay patrons who chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo should think of those 1,000 Buddhas extending their hands as melon vines or morning glories, putting forth their tendrils. Don't be consumed by your fear. Be consumed by the beauty of your opportunity, your life, how amazing it is. Because of strong ties formed with the Lotus Sutra in the past, one can accept and hold this sutra in the present. There can be no doubt that one shall attain the fruit of Buddhahood in the future moment. Through birth and death in the past, birth and death in the present, and birth and death in the future, not to separate oneself from the Lotus Sutra throughout birth and death, spanning the 3 time periods, is to receive the transmission of the Lotus. Now, that's the most literal statement I've heard, I can remember hearing from Nichiren, that proves out this moment-to-moment birth and death. Because when he talks about birth and death in the past, birth and death in the present, birth and death in the present, in this moment, and birth and death in the future, how do you or I perceive birth and death in the past, present, and future without understanding that birth and death is a constant moment-to-moment process? Otherwise, why say this? Thinking in a Western mind, birth and death are the entire span of your life is completely incorrect. It is the foundation of the samsaric attachment. Do you see that? If you perceive that birth and death is each moment, and what you carry along, what you condition the next moment, birth of the next moment to be, that's on you. That's on your perceptive mind of what you're experiencing. So stop coloring your experience with negativity and fear and attachment, and instead be the morning glory. Be the vine that connects each and every moment, each and every leaf of your life into this glorious manifestation of wonder and excitement and preciousness. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Well, yeah, then there's the other side of it. And I'm going to save that for the next video because we've gone on long enough. I so appreciate your being here, being part of this. Like, subscribe, share. Become a member on Patreon. You don't have to spend money to be on my Patreon. But if you can, it supports all of us on this channel, so I can keep doing this research and finding these jewels and sharing them with you. And I guess with that, my patrons, this whole Sangha owes you a debt. So thank you. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Don't forget, threefoldlotus.com. Lots of free info there. The podcasts you can download. The bookstore. Another way you can help support what we do here on lulu.com/spotlight/Quoon. All of that's in the video. You'll see it. Support if you can, but support if you will. Because just watching these videos, liking helps the algorithm. Subscribing, another great step to grow the Sangha. And share with certain people. I don't say with everyone. We have to be judicious. Are people ready? We can't judge them so much as prepare ourselves for the nature of our commitment to helping them practice. Because believe you me, if somebody takes you seriously and starts to look into this practice, they will have questions. Did you not have questions when you first began? Oh yeah. People come to me after 40 years of practice, and it's almost as though they barely understand Buddhism at all because of the nature of their teachers. So who do we follow? Not the person, the law. And the law is something each and every one of us experiences and understands through our own myriad filters. That's why this is in many ways, a solitary practice. By connecting in Sangha, we help one another discover our own tropes and obstacles. The most efficient obstacles that keep us from growing, we're often not even aware of. So that's the benefit of the Sangha. As we all talk with one another, comments, emails, we connect with our mirror in practice. And we hear ourselves, even just writing the email or the comment, you'll hear your own words and you go, well, that's not what I want to say. And you'll slowly change your own mind. That's why this communication thing is so vital to getting to your Buddhahood faster. That's the whole reason for the Sangha. And what is it? It's Bodhisattva practice. If you're communicating how to do this, whether it's your question for your own practice or somebody else's, that is the Bodhisattva, coursing as Bodhisattva, seeking that Buddha way. So again, it's immense. To be part of this Sangha and grow this Sangha is your Bodhisattva practice. So that wells me up with pride and gratitude for you guys being here in this journey together. Thank you for being here. Take care of your health. Be kind on yourself. You don't have to beat yourself up. Sometimes we find things out about our habits and we want to beat ourselves up. I'm guilty of it. I get so angry with myself sometimes when I think, how could I be so dumb? Right? But hey, it's part of samsara, right? So the fact that I realize it, that you realize it in given moments, that's glorious. That's growth. That's moving closer and closer to maintaining our Buddha mind in this life. All right, I'll say it again. Take care of yourself. Take care of your health. Be kind to yourself, kind to others. And I'll see you in the next one. Deal? All right. I'll see you then. Bye for now.